Join us as we explore some of the most pivotal places and events in American history. These are the battlefields and hallowed halls where the very soul of a nation was forged, where the ideals of liberty and equality were tested amidst the fires of revolution and civil war. From the quaint village greens of New England to the rolling hills of Gettysburg, each location we visit echoes with the sacrifices of those who fought for a brighter future. Through their courage, their resilience, and their unwavering belief in the promise of America, they shaped the destiny of a nation. This is a story of triumph and tragedy, of division and unity, a story that continues to resonate deeply within the American spirit. It is a story that we must never forget, for it holds the key to understanding who we are as a people and what we aspire to become. Dawn broke over Lexington, Massachusetts, on April 19, 1775, casting long shadows across the village green. The air, crisp with the promise of spring, held a tension unseen in these peaceful farmlands. For months, the drumbeat of discontent had grown louder, fueled by the grievances of colonists weary of British rule. As the sun climbed higher, British regulars marched into Lexington, their muskets glinting in the morning light. They had come to disarm the colonial militia, to snuff out the embers of rebellion before they could ignite. But the colonists were ready, their own muskets primed, their resolve hardened by a belief that liberty was a cause worth fighting for. A single shot rang out, its origin lost to history. Was it fired by a nervous militiaman or a British soldier eager to teach the colonists a lesson? Whatever the source, that shot ignited a revolution, a fire that would consume the colonies and reshape the world. In the heart of Philadelphia, Independence Hall stands as a testament to the audacity of a young nation. Within its brick walls, men of extraordinary vision and courage gathered to debate the fate of their fledgling nation. They were farmers and merchants, lawyers and printers, united by a common belief that they were no longer beholden to a distant king. The year was 1776. War raged across the colonies, but within Independence Hall, a different kind of battle was being waged, a battle for the soul of a nation. Thomas Jefferson, his pen flowing with eloquence and passion, crafted the words that would define a new era, words that declared to the world that all men are created equal. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed, a beacon of hope for oppressed people everywhere. But the struggle was far from over. It would take years of bloodshed and sacrifice before the dream enshrined within those hallowed halls would be fully realized. The autumn of 1777. The American Revolution hung in the balance. British General John Burgoyne, confident of victory, marched south from Canada, his objective to split the rebellious colonies in two. The fate of the revolution rested on a ragtag army of American militiamen and Continental soldiers, commanded by a general named Horatio Gates. Near the small village of Saratoga, New York, the two armies clashed in a series of bloody battles. The Americans, fighting on familiar ground, used cunning tactics and sheer grit to wear down the British forces. Burgoyne, his escape route cut off, was forced to surrender his entire army. The victory at Saratoga was a turning point in the war. It proved to the world that the American colonists were a force to be reckoned with. More importantly, it convinced France to formally ally with the fledgling nation, providing much-needed military and financial support. 3 years had passed since the American victory at Saratoga. The war had dragged on, a bloody stalemate that tested the resolve of both sides. General George Washington, the commander of the Continental Army, knew that a decisive victory was needed to break the British will to fight. That opportunity came in the fall of 1781. A combined force of American and French troops, supported by the French fleet, trapped a British army under the command of General Charles Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia. Trapped by land and sea, Cornwallis found himself facing an impossible situation. On October 19, 1781, with the haunting strains of the world turned upside down echoing across the battlefield, Cornwallis surrendered his army to General Washington. The British defeat at Yorktown effectively ended the Revolutionary War. The dream of American independence was now a reality. Decades had passed since the American Revolution. A new nation had risen, stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But beneath the surface of unity, deep divisions festered. The issue of slavery, a moral stain on the nation's soul, threatened to tear the young republic apart. In the early hours of April 12, 1861, the storm broke. Confederate forces, determined to secede from the Union, opened fire on Fort Sumter, a federal garrison located in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina. For 34 hours, the bombardment continued, the deafening roar of cannon fire shattering the pre-dawn silence. When the smoke cleared, Fort Sumter lay in ruins, a symbol of a nation fractured. The Civil War, a conflict that would claim the lives of over 600,000 Americans, had begun. The summer of 1863. The fate of a nation hung in the balance. The small town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, became the focal point of a battle that would decide the course of the Civil War. For 3 long days, July 1st to July 3rd, the armies of the North and South clashed in a maelstrom of blood and fury. On the first day, Confederate forces, led by General Robert E. Lee, drove Union troops back through the streets of Gettysburg. The second day saw a series of desperate attacks and counterattacks as both sides fought for control of key terrain. But it was on the third day, on a gently sloping hillside known as Cemetery Ridge, that the tide of battle turned. Pickett's charge, a desperate gamble by Lee to break the Union line, ended in disaster. Thousands of Confederate soldiers, advancing across an open field, were cut down by Union artillery and rifle fire. The Confederate Army, its ranks shattered, was forced to retreat. The Union had won a costly but decisive victory. While the battle for Gettysburg raged in the east, a different kind of struggle was unfolding along the muddy banks of the Mississippi River. Vicksburg, Mississippi, a Confederate stronghold perched high on bluffs overlooking the river, controlled a vital waterway that split the Confederacy in two. For months, Union forces under the command of General Ulysses S. Grant had laid siege to Vicksburg. The city's defenders, under the command of General John C. Pemberton, were determined to resist. Life inside the besieged city was a nightmare of hunger, disease, and constant bombardment. On July 4, 1863, the day after the Confederate defeat at Gettysburg, Vicksburg surrendered to Grant. The Union now controlled the entire length of the Mississippi River, effectively cutting the Confederacy in two. The Anaconda Plan, the Union strategy to strangle the Confederacy, was one step closer to fruition. 4 years of bloody conflict had ravaged the nation. The Confederate Army, once a proud fighting force, was now a shadow of its former self. Outnumbered, outgunned, and exhausted, General Robert E. Lee knew that the end was near. On April 9, 1865, in the small village of Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, Lee met with General Ulysses S. Grant to surrender the Army of Northern Virginia. The terms of surrender were generous. Grant, recognizing the pain and suffering that the war had inflicted on both sides, allowed Confederate soldiers to return home with their horses and personal belongings. In a small parlor in the village of Appomattox, the Civil War came to an end. The nation, so bitterly divided, began the long and painful process of healing. These locations and events have shaped the course of American history, leaving a lasting legacy that continues to influence our nation today. The battles fought and the sacrifices made serve as a constant reminder of the fragility of freedom and the importance of unity. The stories of Lexington and Concord, of Independence Hall and Gettysburg remind us that the ideals of liberty and equality are not given freely, but must be earned by each generation. They challenge us to confront the injustices of our own time with the same courage and determination exhibited by those who came before us. As we reflect on the tumultuous past, let us draw strength from the sacrifices of those who fought to create a more perfect union. Let us honor their memory by striving to build a nation that lives up to its founding ideals, a nation where all citizens are treated with dignity and respect, and where the blessings of liberty are shared by all.